Members of Texas power grid operator announced their resignation after millions of state residents were left without power during days of unprecedentedly frigid temperatures.
World-renowned natural historian Sir David Attenborough told the Security Council the world is perilously close to tipping points that once passed will send global temperatures spiraling catastrophically higher.
And Indonesia says it is in talks with both sides in Myanmar's political crisis, and its foreign minister may visit to help find a solution, but she had no plans for an immediate trip.
When the development of
And our first news comes out of the U.S. Tiger Woods suffered serious injuries to both legs as his car flew off the road and flipped several times near Los Angeles. In a crash, he was very fortunate to survive. Here's Alex Villanueva, Los Angeles County Sheriff. Let's listen in.
Exactly what was said.
Well, if the deputies arrive on scene, there's a vehicle that's rolled over, there's someone inside the vehicle, they can't remove him. Obviously, that's
Was he unconscious or conscious?
we'll leave it at that. He was alive and he was conscious, and that's the extent of that.
What about the evidence of the impairment? You said
There was no evidence of impairment, so subsequent to that, we're not going to make any, there was no effort to draw blood, for example, at the hospital.
Nothing was removed from the scene or found in the scene? Okay, the information I got back from my personnel and the things that they do is they would do a scene assessment. It was brought to my attention that he was conscious. Now, exactly what was said is unknown, but he was conscious. Our personnel make an assessment to make a determination of their level of consciousness, make sure that they're breathing, control any serious bleeding, and then control and address any serious injuries. It was brought to my attention that he had serious leg injuries, and that was assessed at the incident.
We arrived on scene at 7:18 a.m. and discovered the solo vehicle collision, and the sole occupant was, again, Tiger Woods. And deputies, at the time, they did not see any evidence of impairment, anything that of concern. Obviously, the life-saving measures that had to be taken for the occupant of the vehicle, and Chief Osby will speak to that regard. And the vehicle traveled several hundred feet from the center divider at the intersection and rested on the west side of the road in the brush, sustained major damage to the vehicle. You've seen all the images of that. And with that, our Lomita Sheriff Station will be conducting the traffic investigation.
shut down.
Now, Tiger Woods underwent surgery to repair significant orthopedic injuries to his lower right leg and ankle, which included the insertion of a rod into his tibia and the use of a combination of screws and pins to stabilize his foot and ankle. Authorities also said Woods did not appear to be under the influence of drugs or alcohol during the early morning incident. Deputy Carlos Gonzalez, the first officer to arrive at the scene, found Woods trapped in his vehicle but conscious, appearing calm and lucid and able to identify himself as to the deputy as, quote, Tiger.
The nature of his vehicle, the fact that he was wearing a seatbelt, I would say that it greatly increased the likelihood that it saved his life.
Woods was in the Los Angeles area for his annual Genesis Invitational Golf Tournament at the Riviera Country Club and was driving a courtesy car on the morning of the crash. It happened near the hilly Palos Verdes Peninsula at the bottom of a stretch of road which has runaway truck ramps for drivers who lose control going downhill. The section has become notorious for fatal accidents over the years. The car ended up several hundred feet from the initial impact back, lying on its side on a patch of grass some distance off the road with its hood badly damaged. The 45-year-old, one of the most successful golfers of all time, has won 15 major championships. He recently underwent his 5th back surgery and said he was uncertain if he would be able to complete his latest injury comeback in time to play at April's Masters. Wood underwent 4 back surgeries between 2014 and 2017. In May of 2017, Woods was arrested near his home for being asleep at the wheel of his car in a traffic lane. Woods said he had taken prescription drugs and pleaded guilty to reckless driving. But he made an astonishing comeback to win the Masters in 2019, his first major title since 2008. He's the winner of the 82 U.S. PGA titles, level with Sam Snead for all-time record in 2000 to 2001. While aged just 25, Woods became the first man to hold the U.S. Open, British Open, the U.S. PGA, and the Masters titles at the same time. Woods remains 3 major victories shy of the all-time record, 18 won by Jack Nicklaus.
Meanwhile, 4 board members of Texas power grid operator announced their resignation Tuesday after millions of state residents were left without power during days of unprecedentedly frigid temperatures. The board chair of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, Sally Talberg, Vice Chairman Peter Crampton, Finance and Audit Committee Chair Terry Bulger, and Human Resources and Governance Committee Chief Raymond Hepper, all of whom live out of state, will resign effective Wednesday. Texas was particularly hard hit as a frigid air mass paralyzed parts of the southern and central United States early last week, claiming more than 70 lives. Millions were left temporarily without power and water lines were frozen. ERCOT, which operates much of the state's power grid, underestimated the surge in demand caused by the unusually cold weather and used planned outages to avert an uncontrolled blackout. The state's Governor Greg Abbott issued a damning statement acknowledging the resignations and saying the group had failed to do its job. Abbott has ordered an investigation into the grid operator, and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission has also said it will probe the factors behind the power outages. ERCOT reported Friday that utility operations had returned to normal, but tens of thousands were still without power into the weekend as crews struggled to repair downed lines. President Joe Biden issued a major disaster declaration on Saturday for much of Texas, providing badly needed financial and administrative aid, and he plans to visit the state on Friday.
The deadly U.S. Capitol riot on January 6 exposes security and intelligence weaknesses, with military authorities reacting too slowly to calls for National Guard backup. Against an overwhelming mob, security officials tell Congress. In the first Senate hearing on the security failings, officials acknowledged they were blindsided by lack of intelligence and response coordination. Let's listen in.
Based on the intelligence that we received, we plan for an increased level of violence at the Capitol and that some participants may be armed. But none of the intelligence we received predicted what actually occurred. I acknowledge that under the pressure of an unprecedented attack, a number of systems broke down. One of the reported issues described by officers was a lack of clear communications and directions from officials. It appears that the established incident command for the Capitol building was overwhelmed by the enormity of the situation and as officials battling insurrections as opposed to directing the response.
Based on the intelligence, we all believed that the plan met the threat and that we were prepared. We now know that we had the wrong plan. As one of the senior security leaders responsible for the event, I am accountable for that. I accept that responsibility, and as you know, I have resigned my position.
And my response to that was simply, I was just stunned that, I have officers that were out there literally fighting for their lives, and, we're kind of going through, what seemed like an exercise to really check the boxes, and it was not an immediate response.
Of the multitude of events I've worked in my nearly 19-year career in the department, this was by far the worst of the worst. We could have had 10 times the amount of people working with us, and I still believe the battle would have been just as devastating.
Among the most serious lapses revealed, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, sent U.S. Capitol Police a report on the eve of the unrest, warning that extremist groups were coming to Washington ready for war. But the document did not reach USCP leadership. And lawmakers also heard that military officials had been reluctant to send troops to defend Congress, even when it was clear conditions at the Capitol had deteriorated. In the first congressional hearing on the attack, police chiefs and the House and Senate sergeants at arms acknowledged they were blindsided by lack of intelligence and response coordination to the worst domestic insurrection since the Civil War. In compelling testimony, they also painted a picture of officers badly outnumbered by armed and coordinated insurgents.
Staying in the U.S., President Joe Biden declared Canada and the United States best friends Tuesday, while Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the friendship extraordinary in a virtual meeting, turning the page on the turbulent Donald Trump era. Although COVID-19 restrictions kept the two leaders apart physically, they went out of their way to demonstrate that the biggest or the giant neighboring countries are back to their traditional closeness after the tension of Trump's America First policies. Watch this.
Closer, everyone. Both our nations getting COVID under control at home and around the world is an immediate priority. We also agreed to work in close cooperation to strengthen the supply chain security and resilience, and to ensure that Canada and the United States are driving a robust economic recovery that benefits everyone, not just those at the top. We're launching a high-level climate ambition ministerial, and to align our policies and our goals, and to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. Let me reiterate our support for the release of the detained in China, two Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Coving. Human beings are not bartering chips. You know, we're going to work together until we get their safe return. The United States has no closer and no more important friend than Canada. Our nations share a close geography and history that will forever bind us together.
This afternoon, the President and I discussed collaboration to beat COVID-19, from keeping key supplies moving and supporting science and research to joint efforts through international institutions. We're standing united in this fight. I know the President and I are on the same page when it comes to standing up for the middle class and people working hard to join it. And with millions of families relying on the Canada-US partnership, this is work we must do together. In the face of COVID-19, of climate change, of rising inequality, this is our moment to act. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Joe, for your leadership, for your engagement, and thank you in advance for all the great work we're going to be doing together. Merci, mon ami.
Thank you, Justin. Au revoir.
Bonsoir.
Now, Prime Minister
Trudeau was the first foreign leader to phone Biden after he won the November election, and Trudeau was the first foreign leader the Democrat called after getting into the Oval Office. One area Biden and Trudeau did not comment on in the public portion of their remarks was the U.S. decision to cancel the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, a project fiercely opposed by environmentalists but backed by Ottawa and previously by Trump.
In other news, a notorious Iraqi preacher said to be the Islamic State jihadist group's de facto leader in Germany was sentenced to 10 years and 6 months in prison by a German court on Wednesday. The 37-year-old Ahmad Abdulaziz Abdullah, better known as Abu Wala, was accused of directing a jihadist network which radicalized young people in Europe and helped them travel to Iraq and Syria. He was found guilty of belonging to a foreign terrorist organization, helping to plan subversive violent attacks, and financing terrorism. The verdict marked the end of a special case which was very long and very complex. According to Judge Frank Rosno, as he handed down the verdict after 245 days of hearings. Abu Wala was in the dock with 3 other men in a costly, high-security trial that began in 2017 in the northern German town of Celle. His 3 co-defendants were handed sentences ranging from 4 to 8 years for supporting ISIS. According to the Interior Ministry, German security forces have prevented 17 such attacks since 2009, the majority since a spate of successful attacks in 2016. Authorities believe there are 615 potentially dangerous Islamists currently living in Germany, 5 times as many as in 2013.
In Asia now, where Vietnam receives its first batch of AstraZeneca vaccine today, with around 50,000 people in the high-risk group will be prioritized to get the first doses. A Korean air cargo aircraft bearing some 117,000 AstraZeneca doses landed at Tan Son Nhat Airport in Ho Chi Minh City just after 10 a.m. today. The vaccine batch was transported from South Korea and initial doses will be given in early March. Vietnam's health ministry has recently listed 11 individual groups, including frontline workers or frontline health workers, will be given priority to get vaccinated. The Southeast Asian nation has ordered 30 million vaccine doses of AstraZeneca vaccine in 2021, and it will also receive another 4.9 million doses aided by COVAX Vaccine Alliance.
Meanwhile, a first batch of 200,000 doses of China's Sinovac vaccines arrived in Thailand, with frontline health workers aimed to be the first group to receive the inoculation. 800,000 doses and 1 million doses will arrive in Thailand in March and April respectively. Let's listen in.
วัคซีนคิดว่าเราจะมีจำกัดอยู่มันก็มีจัดหาเพิ่มเติมให้มันเพียงพอที่จะสร้างภูมิคุ้มกันหมู่ให้กับคนในประเทศของเราได้นะครับการขนส่งวัคซีนจีน 200,000 โดสมาถึงสุวรรณภูมิวันนี้สะท้อนให้เห็นว่าฝ่ายจีนได้ปฏิบัติอย่างจริงจังต่อคำมั่นสัญญาของประธานาธิบดีสีจิ้งผิงที่บอกว่าวัคซีนจีนต้องเป็นสินค้าสาธารณะทั่วโลก
The government's vaccine plan has come under heavy scrutinization by the anti-government protesters after it was revealed that Siam Bioscience, a company owned by the Crown Property Bureau, will be the sole manufacturer of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines in the country, a deal which is seen as a way for the monarchy to regain their falling popularity. The Prime Minister also said Thailand will start vaccinating priority groups, including health workers, against the coronavirus by the end of this week. The Premier also said that 26 million doses of vaccines on order from AstraZeneca will be ready around May to June. Thailand has also reserved a further 35 million doses from AstraZeneca.
Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin was among the first in the country to get the COVID-19 vaccine today as the country's virus immunization drive kicked off this afternoon. The Southeast Asian nation is aiming to vaccinate at least 80% of its 32 million people, with a program covering 3 phases starting this month before ending in February next year. Malaysia has so far secured access to a supply of 66.7 million doses of various vaccines, including 32 million from Pfizer and BioNTech. More than 288,000 COVID-19 cases and 1,076 deaths have been recorded in Malaysia so far. The country has been battling a resurgent wave of the virus in recent months, and though the number of daily cases has been steadily declining, health authorities still record about 2,500 new infections and several deaths every day.
Now, the coronavirus has already caused at least 2,474,437 deaths around the world since the outbreak emerged in China in December of 2019. Now, this is according to an AFP tally compiled from official sources. The U.S. is the worst affected country with 500,313 deaths, followed by Brazil with 247,143, Mexico with 180,536, India with 156,463, and Britain with 120,757. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Welcome back to the news. Indonesia says it is in talks with both sides in Myanmar's political crisis, and its foreign minister may visit to help find a solution. But she had no plans for an immediate trip. Watch this.
Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia left open an option to visit Naypyidaw to work on solution at the regional level and disrespect ASEAN, where the development of situation in Myanmar is taken into consideration. After taking into account the current development and following the consultation with a number of other ASEAN countries, this is not the ideal time to conduct a visit to Myanmar. Indonesia continues to commit to contribute. Indonesia is also committed to pursuing communication with all parties in Myanmar.
The statement came after a leaked Myanmar government document showed Indonesia's Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi was to visit the coup-hit nation on Thursday. The trip was not confirmed by Indonesia, a key diplomatic player among Southeast Asian nations, and it said today that no visit had been scheduled. But it left open the possibility of a later trip by Marsudi, who was still expected to visit Myanmar for a special meeting of foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. The timing of that meeting has yet to be announced. Marsudi, who is currently in Thailand, would have been the first foreign envoy to visit Myanmar since a February 1 military-led coup.
Meanwhile, thousands of Myanmar demonstrators in Yangon marched for the 24th day of protests following the February 1 coup, calling for the military government to give power back to Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy Party, which won the election in November last year. The diverse group of protesters, including ethnic Karens and the Umbrella Campaign Youth Movement, held up signs of the Civil Disobedience Movement, or CDM, and they waved NLD flags while chanting and marching towards downtown Yangon. 3 anti-coup protesters have been killed in demonstrations so far, while a man patrolling his Yangon neighborhood against night arrests was also shot dead on the weekend. Use of live ammunition against unarmed people is unacceptable, the foreign ministers of the G7 group of rich democracies, comprising Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Britain, and the U.S., together with the EU, said this in a statement on Tuesday. The sharp condemnation also comes after the overnight blacklisting of another 2 members of the regime by the U.S., Air Force Chief Mang Mong Kiao and fellow junta member Mo Mien-tun, after Washington announced targeted sanctions against other top generals earlier this month. Hours earlier, the European Union also approved sanctions targeting Myanmar's military and their economic interests, with EU Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell saying financial support to the government reform programs was being withheld.
In other news, Italy said it has asked the United Nations to launch an investigation into the killing of its ambassador to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The envoy, Luca Attanasio, 43, died on Monday after a World Food Program convoy was ambushed in a dangerous part of the eastern DRC near the border with Rwanda. Attanasio's Italian bodyguard and a Congolese driver were also killed. Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio's comments came the morning after the bodies of the 2 Italians were returned by military plane to Rome. On Monday, the DRC's Interior Ministry blamed the killings on the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, or FDLR, a Rwandan Hutu rebel group. But the FDLR rejected the allegation and instead blamed the Rwandan and the DRC militaries. Di Maio said the party was relying on UN protocol during the trip from the capital Kinshasa to Goma, some 2,500 kilometers east, but that Attanasio had full power to decide how and where to move within DRC. 6 attackers allegedly forced the vehicles to stop by placing obstacles on the road and firing several shots from small arms in the air. He said upon the arrival of the armed park rangers at the site, the attackers opened fire on the bodyguard or the soldier, killing him, and the Italian ambassador seriously wounding him.
Thousands of anti-government protesters rallied in Georgia after the arrest of an opposition leader, deepening a political crisis that erupted after disputed elections last year. Take a look. Now, hundreds of riot police used tear gas earlier against Nika Melia's supporters who were camped out at his United National Movement Party's headquarters in the capital Tbilisi before he was arrested in an overnight police raid and placed in pre-trial detention. Scores of Melia supporters were also detained in the morning raid, and the leader of the opposition, Lelo Party, called for a peaceful, unwavering struggle to defend Georgian democracy. The move sparked swift condemnation from the opposition and Western diplomats as fears mount over the ex-Soviet nation's fragile democracy. The United States led the chorus of international condemnation of Melia's arrest. State Department spokesman Ned Price said the United States was deeply troubled and warned that the move went against Georgia's aspirations for closer integration with the West.
At least 75 inmates died Tuesday and several were injured in riots blamed on gang rivalry at 3 jails in Ecuador's overcrowded prison system, according to authorities. As security forces battled to regain control, distraught family members waited desperately for news outside the prison in Ecuador's western port city of Guayaquil, where officials said 21 people died. Watch this.
Bueno, ellos tienen videos, no sé cómo le han llegado videos de personas en el piso, muertas, tantas cosas que se ven. Y créanme lo que uno está, yo estoy con el corazón en la mano porque no sé de mí.
Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno on Twitter attributed the riots to criminal organizations engaged in simultaneous acts of violence in several prisons. The prison authority described fierce fighting between organized gangs that go by names such as Los Pipos, Los Lobos, and Tigrones. They rely on drug trafficking and operate their criminal enterprises from prison. In order to reduce prisoner numbers amid the coronavirus epidemic, the government commuted the sentences of people convicted of minor offenses, reducing overcrowding from 42% to 30%. This still leaves Ecuador's prison system with a capacity to house 29,000 inmates in 60-odd facilities with a prisoner population of 38,000. There are only 1,500 guards to oversee all of them.
Meanwhile, Iran said it had started to restrict some site inspections by the UN nuclear watchdog in response to the U.S. refusal so far to lift sanctions imposed by former President Donald Trump. The move prompted Britain, France, and Germany, the three European nations party to the 2015 nuclear deal, to say they deeply regret the decision and that they were united in underlining the dangerous nature of this decision. They said it will significantly constrain the International Atomic Energy Agency's access to sites and to safeguarding information. On Tuesday, the IAEA's Director General Rafael Grossi told a seminar that the interim three-month deal agreed at talk Sunday in Tehran was far from an ideal situation.
That, of course, this is far from an ideal situation, but we need to recognize that we are confronted with a new reality. I think we facilitated an easier atmosphere and time for the indispensable diplomacy that will be deployed in the next few days. This is a system that allow us to continue to monitor and to register all the key activities that are taking place throughout this period, so that at the end of it, we can recover all this information.
آژانس رسما اعلام کردیم که از صبح 5 اسفند قانون اجرا خواهد شد و به همین دلیل هم این اقدام صورت گرفته، عملیاتی شده.
World-renowned natural historian Sir David Attenborough told the Security Council the world is perilously close to tipping points that once passed will send global temperatures spiraling catastrophically higher. Attenborough, 94, the world's most influential wildlife broadcaster, addressed a virtual meeting of the 15-member Council on Climate-Related Risks to International Peace and Security, chaired by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Watch this.
We are today perilously close to tipping points that, once passed, will send global temperatures spiraling catastrophically higher. If we continue on our current path, we will face the collapse of everything that gives us our security. Climate change is a threat to global security that can only be dealt with by unparalleled levels of global cooperation. It will compel us to question our economic models and where we place value. Invent entirely new industries. Recognize the moral responsibility that wealthy nations have to the rest of the world, and put a value on nature that goes far beyond money.
Unless we protect those most exposed and susceptible to climate-related impacts, we can expect them to become even more marginalized and their grievances to be reinforced. High levels of inequality that climate change enhances can weaken social cohesion and lead to discrimination, scapegoating, rising tensions and unrest, increasing the risk of conflict. Those who are already being left behind will be left even farther behind.
Whether you like it or not, it is a matter of when, not if, your country and your people will have to deal with the security impacts of climate change. So let's do what this council was created to do, and let's show the kind of global leadership that is needed to protect the peace, the security, and the stability of our nations, of our regions, and of our world.
Unlike most security threats, addressing the climate crisis actually presents the greatest economic opportunity in modern history. Not since the Industrial Revolution has there been such potential to build back better in every corner of the world. And sadly, not doing so will leave us in a position where we are, just by inadvertence, by lack of will, by lack of coming together, marching forward in what is almost tantamount to a mutual suicide pact.
In other environment news, nighttime footage showed Sicily's Mount Etna, one of the world's most active volcanoes, belching smoke and ashes. Take a look. Italian authorities said it posed no danger to the surrounding villages. Nevertheless, with small stones and ashes raining down, authorities decided to close Catania's international airport. The emergency authorities said on their Twitter account that they were monitoring the situation closely in the three villages at the foot of the volcano, namely Linguaglosa, Fornazo, and Milo. Images showed a spectacular rose-colored plume of ashes above the snow-capped summit, but the cloud had largely dissipated by nightfall, while lava flowed continued to glow. At 3,324 meters, nearly 11,000 feet, Etna is the tallest active volcano in Europe and has erupted frequently in the past 500,000 years.
Now, Buckingham Palace says Prince Philip responding to treatment for infection. Prince Philip was taken to the hospital last Tuesday after feeling unwell. We have Ariane Celestino of our ABC UK Bureau with that story. Ariane.
Hi, Alma. Queen Elizabeth II's 99-year-old husband, Prince Philip, will spend more time in a London hospital where he is being treated for an unspecified condition, Buckingham Palace said on Tuesday. The Duke of Edinburgh remains at King Edward VII's hospital where he is receiving medical attention for an infection, a statement said. He is comfortable and responding to treatment, but is not expected to leave hospital for several days. Philip, who is married to the Queen for 73 years, was admitted to the private London hospital a week ago as a precautionary measure after he felt unwell, according to the palace. His youngest son, Prince Edward, earlier told Sky News Television that his father was a lot better and he's looking forward to getting out. So we keep our fingers crossed. Edward said his father was feeling frustrated inside the hospital as you can only watch the clock so many times and the walls are only so interesting. On Monday, Philip's grandson, Prince William, said that the Duke was okay and being closely monitored by medical staff. The prince was able to walk into the hospital unaided last Tuesday after arriving in private transport rather than an ambulance, a source said at the time. Palace sources have said that his admission was not coronavirus related. Both he and the Queen received first doses of a COVID-19 vaccine in January. Heir to the throne, Prince Charles visited his father in hospital on Saturday, but did not comment on his state of health. Philip, a former naval officer, was treated at the same hospital in August 2012 after a recurrence of a bladder infection that led him low during the Queen's Diamond Jubilee celebrations. The previous year, he had a stent fitted after suffering a blocked coronary artery. Reporting from the United Kingdom, I am Arian Celestino, and we live in interesting times.
We have a breaking news shooting incident in Commonwealth Avenue, Quezon City. That's not far from the station. We have Erlo Bringas for that details of that story. Erlo, what do you have for us?
CJ, the Filipino Red Cross reported that 2 police officers were wounded. QCPD District Special Operations Unit Chief Police Major Sandy Caporoso confirmed that 2 members of the unit died in the encounter early at Kumon. Operation, but the incident make a standoff undetermined.
And with the updates on that incident, we have gotten the report that 2 police officers have been wounded, and we will be calling you again, Erlo Bringas. There you go. We will be pausing for a quick break while we try to contact Erlo Bringas again with the report on that shooting incident in a mall here in Quezon City. We'll be back.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced. Eagle News, because we live in interesting times.
First in business news, Hong Kong shares ended with hefty losses Wednesday after the city's finance chief said he would hike stamp duty on equity trade for the first time in almost 3 decades. The Hang Seng Index tumbled 2.99% or 914.40 points to 29,718.24. The benchmark Shanghai Composite Index sank 1.99% or 72.28 points to 3,564.08. While the Shenzhen Composite Index on China's second exchange dropped 2.03% or 48.73 points to 2,347.28.
Britain's Lloyds Banking Group on Wednesday reported a slump in 2020 profit due to significant economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic. Profit after tax nosedived 65% to £865 million last year from £2.46 billion in 2019, according to LBG in a statement. The bank took a huge £4.2 billion impairment charge, which reflected a significant deterioration in the economic outlook as a result of the COVID-19 health emergency. Outgoing Chief Executive Antonio Horta Osorio, who leaves later this year after a decade in charge, said the group's financial performance in the year has been impacted by the pandemic. Under Horta Osorio's stewardship, the bank slashed thousands of jobs and branches in a vast cost-cutting drive following the global financial crisis, refocusing on retail and business banking that helped it return to profit. Alongside the results, Horta Osorio said significant uncertainties remain, specifically relating to the coronavirus pandemic and the speed and efficacy of the vaccination program in the UK and around the world.
In other business news, Suzuki's chairman Osamu Suzuki will retire after more than 4 decades at the helm of the Japanese car maker, according to the company today. The 91-year-old, who married into the firm's founding family, will leave the post after a shareholder meeting in June and become an advisor, it said, after he became company president in 1978. Suzuki expanded the automaker's business in India, where it has had enormous success, and steadily increased its share in Japan's small car market. He became chairman in 2000, and his eldest son, Toshihiro Suzuki, assumed the role of president in 2015. The car maker, which had once tied up with General Motors and Volkswagen, forged a capital alliance with Toyota in 2019. No one will replace him for now, while Toshihiro Suzuki will remain president.
Meanwhile, in the wake of a weekend scare on a Boeing 777 over engine failure, the Federal Aviation Administration moved immediately to suspend flights on planes with the same model. And on Tuesday, the regulator ordered a deeper inspection of the Pratt & Whitney engines on Boeing 777 planes that had failed over Denver days earlier, with debris raining onto neighborhoods below. Watch this.
We want to understand what happened and then take the necessary steps to prevent a similar occurrence in the future. You know, this past weekend, we had an incident of an engine failure aboard a Boeing 777 aircraft departing Denver. And we're fortunate there were no fatalities or injuries. The FAA has reviewed all available safety data following the incident. We're in the process of developing and issuing an emergency airworthiness directive that will require either immediate or stepped up inspections of the 777 aircraft using this type of Pratt & Whitney engine.
The incident, in which a Pratt & Whitney engine burst into flames and scattered debris over a Denver suburb shortly after takeoff for Honolulu, led to scores of Boeing 777s being grounded worldwide over safety concerns. The regulator said it was issuing the order as a result of a fan blade failure that occurred Saturday on a Boeing 777-200 that had just departed from Denver International Airport. Before they can return to the skies, operators must conduct a thermal acoustic image inspection of the large titanium fan blades located at the front of each engine. The AI technology can detect cracks on the interior surfaces of the hollow fan blades or in areas that cannot be seen during a visual inspection, according to a statement. Metal fatigue has emerged as the chief suspect in the engine failure, which caused no injuries.
Digital labor platforms have increased fivefold worldwide in the last decade, according to the ILO's latest World Employment and Social Outlook 2021 report. Now, this growth has underlined the need for international policy dialogue and regulatory cooperation in order to provide decent work opportunities and foster the growth of sustainable businesses more consistently. Here's Mr. Guy Ryder, ILO's Director General.
The explosive growth of these platforms, fivefold increase in these platforms over the last 10 years, and then going beyond that headline, firstly, the concentration of their presence in a relatively limited number of countries, but the transformational change they're bringing to the world of work. Their operations bring out very, very fundamental questions of working conditions, access to social protection, minimum wages, whether these people working on the platforms are employees or independents. It brings us really back to the fundamentals of how we organize the world of work, and really brings back also many of the issues that characterize the ILO's centenary Future of Work initiative. I do think this is a groundbreaking report, because I know of no other place where so much evidence is brought to one place about how these platforms operate, the opportunities they generate, which are real, but the challenges as well that come with them. So I hope that this is a starting point which can lead to a process of dialogue, which can bring about the type of coordinated policy response that we need. Because one thing is clear, by their very nature, these platforms raise international issues. They go across multiple national jurisdictions. So we need the international dialogue, which can eventually generate the appropriate policy responses. And I really do think this is the first step in what might prove to be a long journey, but an absolutely necessary one.
Platforms also allow businesses to access a large, flexible workforce with varied skills while expanding their customer base. The report focuses on two main types of digital labor platform: online web-based platforms, where tasks are performed online and remotely by workers, and location-based platforms, where tasks are performed at a specified physical location by individuals such as taxi drivers and delivery workers. Its findings are based on surveys and interviews with some 12,000 workers and representatives of 85 businesses around the world in multiple sectors.
Back on the line is Erlo Bringas with his report on the shooting incident in a mall area here in Quezon City. Erlo, what do you have for us?
TJ, as of this moment, there is no clear information who is the target of the police operation a while ago. But the incident make a standoff undetermined number of people inside of Commonwealth. Although we're getting reports that people are now being led out of the mall. Some of the eyewitness in the area says at 25 Eagle News that multiple gunshots heard while they were inside the mall, and the mall management secured the entry points. Other eyewitness in the area says the shooting happens at the fast food restaurant near in the mall area. As of this moment, there's no clear information, and a statement came from Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency and Philippine National Police. But the two parties, they insist that they set up a legitimate operation. The mall management says they are now already coordinating with the police about the incident for the investigation. Traffic on the eastbound lane of Commonwealth Avenue until now was stopped. Authorities opened a zipper lane on the westbound side. Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte called the attention of all residents of Quezon City to stop spreading fake news and false information in social media about the incident that can cause panic to everyone. authorities already in the scene to investigate the incident. CJ.
All right. Well, Erlo, let me just get this straight. So both sides, the PNP and the PIDEA, the Philippine Drug Agency, they both claim that they are at the site for a legitimate buy-bust operation. So no target yet. As of the moment, we don't have any idea yet who the target was, but somehow they ended up shooting at each other. Is that what happened?
Yes, exactly, CJ. Both parties insist that they have a legitimate information, but there is no clear information until now. Who is the target of the buy-bust operation, and how is the buy-bust operation happens in the area? But we will talk that to PNP Chief Debolchinas maybe later, that he will be going here in the site to also investigate the incident, CJ.
All right. Well, it's very important for us to find out who was at the site first and who made the first shot, who delivered the first shot. And, well, last question, Erlo, we saw the videos earlier circulating online. There were a lot of onlookers, a lot of civilians in the area. So clearly there was a lot of protocols breached or not followed during this exchange of gunfire between the two parties. Would you have any idea if there are civilians wounded?
Yes, CJ, there's no reported civilians wounded in the area, but the police came through in the area to stop all the civilians going in the incident area to make sure that the control is happening.
All right. Well, those are very scary pictures that we're seeing on the screen right now. We're hearing the gunshots being exchanged between the two parties. Well, tell us more about the details on this incident when you get them after the PNP chief gets there. Thank you so much, Erlo, and please do stay safe. We want you to stay safe.
From Eagle News, Manila Bureau, Erlo Bringas, we live in interesting times.
All right. Well, finally, in our news, the wartime painting by Sir Winston Churchill, gifted to U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt as a memento of the pair's visit there following the Casablanca Conference of 1943, is being sold at auction in London. Let's take a look.
So this is one of our biannual auctions of modern British art, and in particular, the excitement we have today is this painting by Winston Churchill, a great rarity. Many people don't even know that he painted as an artist, and in fact, he was an amateur artist and painted as a pastime. But he painted over 500 works in oil, and this painting here is a particular rarity because it's the only painting he produced in the entirety of the Second World War. After the conference ended, Churchill said to Roosevelt, "You can't come all the way over from America to North Africa without coming to see the sun setting over the Atlas Mountains and the city of Marrakesh." So they drove together to Marrakesh, where Churchill then showed Roosevelt the sunset, and they enjoyed the sunset together. And then the subject was immortalized in this painting by Churchill the following day and given to Roosevelt as a present. So, yes, it is. It's interesting. We have a great painting by Sir John Lavery in the auction as well of a subject called Viscountess Castleross, and her name was Doris Delavigne, the great aunt of the supermodels Cara and Poppy Delavigne, and is a painting of her in Palm Springs in 1938. And she was famed in society for her legs, and the artist has cleverly painted her legs twice in the same painting. Churchill was influenced by a number of artists, no real movements, but certainly he was influenced by the colours the post-impressionists adopted, and he tended to paint en plein air, so he was, in a sense, influenced by the impressionists. His greatest influences were two British artists, one called Sir John Lavery, another called Walter Richard Sickert. They were both artists famous at the beginning of the 20th century, so contemporaries of his, and they taught him some of the skills of painting. I think he would definitely, I think he'd be shocked, actually. He never sold a painting in his lifetime. He only gave them as presents to family or to people who were friends or he admired. And the reason for that is he saw himself just, as an amateur artist, and he did it for his own pleasure.
That looks gorgeous.
Yes, I still can't stop thinking about the shooting in the mall.
I know.
I sure hope the shoppers there are all safe, and
next time
I wonder
that
how
happens,
traffic is
stay
now.
away.
Yeah.
Stay away. That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ here. We'll see you again tomorrow.
See you back tomorrow. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. Malma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.